go. Lengthwise, latitude-wise, up towards from Texas to the northern part of the body. So, welcome everybody. I hope I said that right. We're gonna have a great discussion today, James.
That's
Let's do
right.
it. Do it.
Yeah, so you were in Oregon and I'm in North Carolina, and so the eclipse is between us. It's just separated. It just seared its way through between us right now. I am overcast here, so there's nothing to if there's been any sort of visual change, I've not noticed, but I have been paying attention. But um I will say though that I was reading about Raku. The colors of Raku are gold and orange. The colors of the eclipse are gold and orange, and there's these yellow. I think they're tanagers that have been here, which is different. So it's almost like the aura of the eclipse is showcasing itself in these colored birds, which is kind of cool. So yeah, I I I cannot think of a better, more primal example to prove to you the power of the technology of belief than an eclipse. The most freaked out things have happened historically on eclipses. And personally, I wish that we would talk more about our own power, our own ability to spike the egregore and to insert our angst into a flux machine. And if enough of us insert our angst to it at a certain point, kinetic plasma is charged and comes out and things are created. And this shouldn't be weird. I don't know why this is like, yeah, right, whatever. Or we're calling this new age to discuss this. This is every single full moon has been this practice. Um, the same kind of squeezing takes place. And one of the beautiful things about having the eclipse is if you believe in nothing else, and I don't recommend that, but if you believe in nothing else, you can look at this thing and watch the power of a magnifying glass passing its darkness across the land and watching that be the psychic uh Pied Piper, and it allows anyone who has a feeling that they've been wanting to express, they get to express right now. And anyone who's been holding anything in that's been difficult, anyone that's been struggling to finally just make an action, this is that flux capacitor. This is that thing that sparks it off. And if we understood that this is how it works all the time, not just during an eclipse, all the time, we would have such a better fundamental idea about who we are. And more importantly, how and why we need fear to dilate us, to give us that, oh God, I'm just gonna jump. And you jump off the rocks, right? It's water. It makes sense. You should be able to make it. Why are you afraid? Because you heard the rumor of little Billy who died 17 years ago, and should is this going to happen now? And all of those are exactly supposed to happen because the entire ceremony would be the only opportunity you would have to not just face your fears, but to pull your fears out of the oven, the ones that you've had in the oven for years, cooking, specifically for moments like this, where you can exert and do things. And this is why I get called Luciferian all the time, because this is how murders happen. Right now, people are being murdered today that would otherwise have been murdered had it not been for the eclipse. It's just true. And those people that have been murdered, it's this is not a new thing. It's not like the eclipse created the murder. The eclipse allowed the rest of the spark to complete its transaction. And full moons do the same thing. Menstruation does the same thing. The tide does the same thing. The red tide does the same thing. The seasons do the same thing. And so when you are setting up this sort of like grand thing that's happening across everyone's vector, you are giving the opportunity for everyone. I'm just going to be muting people here as best I can. To Phil, you guys are gonna have to unmute if you're gonna say something. I want you to say something. They're just background noise, but it's giving you the opportunity to sneak in what it is you really want. And the crowd always does this. The herd always does this. When I cast peanuts into the driveway, the crows, um, it's not an all for one thing. The crows are terrified. They're like, why is this dude giving us peanuts? It's a trap. I don't trust this guy. There's there's not a world where someone's just going to give us peanuts with no consequences. This is what I see the crows think. So one crow takes one for the team. He doesn't actually eat a peanut. He lands in the middle of the peanuts and struts around like, what are you going to do about it? Who's going to who's coming to get me? And the whole time he's calling, he's telling the other crows, check this out. And he's not eating, he's gaining prana. All the other crows are building a social network with this crow right now because he's taking one for the team and he's cockatooing his rooster to pull the prana into him. And this is how they survive. If there weren't multiple crows, they would not be able to feast on these things because the whole time the squirrels have no fear at all and they're just taking the acorns one by one. And the crows are like, it's a trap. I'm telling you, the crevice is closing, the rock is closing. I don't know what to do. And so they formulate enough bravery and they create a sacrifice. And that sacrifice is the one that wants to be sacrificed the most. He sees the opportunity too. This this eclipse is just like any other Wicker Man. And honestly, if it weren't for the seasons, if it weren't for the strife, if it wasn't for the capitalism, if it wasn't for the Zionist regimes, if it wasn't for the ignorant hyena constantly throwing chairs at each other and calling it justice, we would never have the angst to fulfill our own prophecy. And we wouldn't have this ability to throw a grappling hook onto a passing airship and say, this is my only chance to go, and to utilize that. So really, if you think about why is the eclipse so terrifying, this is why it's so terrifying. This is why people fear it. This is why they're like, holy fuck, here comes an eclipse, because deep down people know this is the opportunity. This is the time to go. I I I want to take this opportunity to address someone in the comments really has an issue, like so many people do. I get it. With they There's a primary color problem when you're hearing me describe the world because you think that I'm saying that no one is out to get you. And it hurts people's feelings because they know that there are people out to get them, and they think that I'm trying to tell them that they're not. And I wrote a book called Blueprints of Mind Control. It's hilarious to me that I'm still being accused of this, but it makes sense. It makes sense because the thermocline only has one resolution. When you're terrified, you're only going to look above you and just see terror. And if you can relax, you're going to be able to look above you and see that it's not terror, it's just a warm zone of urine, and above that there's a cooler zone that's different. And as you start to just look around, it becomes impossible for it not to be the way that I'm discussing. And at no point do I want anyone to ignore the hyena. I I deal with them every day. I'm haunted by them every day. This is why I talk about this stuff, because I think we can come past this. And I think the way to come past this is to really firmly appreciate how important things like this are. This is the opportunity to see the truth if you're not afraid. And the eclipse does that. If you're afraid, you're going to freak out. And if you have a grudge with someone, you're going to magically decide that, hey, it happens to be this guy. Hey, look, I realize that I have a grudge with Eddie, but it just happens to be that the prophecy says that we need to sacrifice Eddie so the sun will come out, and that those two things happen more than we want to admit. That's actually the history of everything. And so when we understand that we scapegoat each other, it becomes very obvious, even more so, why people get terrified during an eclipse, because we know who we really are. We get to see what we really do to each other. And this really is the power of these things. The 9/11 and COVID both gave you insight. And I realize that if you want to say the world is evil, you're going to say they're evil because of 9/11. And you're going to say the world is evil because of COVID. And I'm going to tell you that I know that the world is not evil because of 9/11. I know that the world is not evil because of COVID. And I can prove that because the only reason why you're here is because 9/11 showed you something. And if you missed it, COVID showed you something. And now you're hanging out. And you're like, hey, who are these other people? I want to hang out with these other people because I feel less insane when I'm hanging around this crowd. Why? Because you see it too. And you're trying to stretch the yoga about, so they're evil and all powerful and they're blundering and they keep making mistakes and the mistakes keep waking me up, but I'm still a prisoner because they're so powerful. But even though they're super powerful, they also make a lot of blunders because they keep making mistakes. And you look in the endless circle of it all. And when you've been crucified enough, if you're lucky, you've been crucified enough and you don't have fear about being crucified. You've had practice at it. And when you're lucky enough at that, while they're putting you on the cross, you're laughing at this point because because it's just like, oh my God, this is hilarious. So we're doing this again. And you can do the same to the rest of the world. What if New York was such a corrupt, just piece of shit place to do business, to do anything right, to have anything honest happen? What if it was such a corrupt den of so much just uninhibited, just awfulness, and that you wanted to fix it? How would you fix it? Because after you break down the fantasies of going in and saying, I would just expose the truth and I would just tell no lies and I would Robin Hood the place and I would, after you've done with that and you realize you're a finite being and you have enough self-worth, you start to say, I just want results. I don't want to die in a crusade trying to win a truly an unwinnable war, because we're not dealing with reason. We're in a world of belief. And so why not let's embrace that, and why not utilize the aspects of the eclipse, the aspects of the full moon, the aspects of the corruption itself to invigorate everyone. And so if you were a part of a divine order, even if you were evil and you thought that the world was run by an evil God, then you would want to mimic his evilness. And so if you think the eclipse is evil, then it still makes sense what I'm saying, because the evilness itself of the eclipse is really the thing that's enlightening you. The Vedic tradition of the eclipse, which, guys, there's so much mythology. I mean, I'm not trying to say this is the only one, okay? So seriously, embrace your eclipse in whatever way you define it as. This is the technology of belief. In Vedic thought, this creature, this demiurge, this titan with three faces And you can think about that as a past, present, and a future, an id, an ego, and a superego, a triune man who was taught by Venus, taught by Lucifer himself, that and by the way, this Lucifer figure in Vedic astrology is considered the teacher of all others who were here to learn. So the highest teacher among all the teachers said to one of these creatures, this demiurge creature, that what you should do if you want to learn more is you should eat the sun. You should block the sun. You should eat the sun. You should drink this nectar and reach immortality. And by doing that, the story that we are all told, the eclipse story from the natives that are terrified of the eclipse, tell you the story that that creature was punished and its head was chopped off. And the problem is that when the head was chopped off, it had already drank enough of this nectar so that its head was chopped off, but it's immortal now. And so the idea of an eclipse is this constant rising of this Luciferian force that gets so powerful it eats the sun and it offends the sun with so much of veracity that its head's chopped off. And that if you fear the eclipse, if you fear death, this is a story of failure. This is a story of being naughty. This is a story of dying. This is a story of arrogance. This is a story of spitting in the face of God. But if you're not afraid of the eclipse, if you're not afraid of dying, if you're not afraid of losing an old world and starting a new one right now and using the power of this action to propel yourself there, then you can look at the exact same Vedic story and say, wait a minute, this dude was considered the wisest of all. And he told everyone else, if you want to advance, you need to swallow the sun. And you did. And what happened? They became immortal. But James, they lost their snake body. Their head was chopped off. And surely that's a punishment. Just like surely being crucified is a punishment. Just like surely being divorced is a punishment. Just like surely failing at any of your deepest, most meaningful artistic projects is a punishment. And that if you hate the eclipse, if you hate death, then you're going to hate punishment. You're going to find it grueling because it's ineffectual and it's mean and it's meaningless and it's doing nothing to help. But if you have the power to die, then you can see through the slipstream of this thermocline. You see the different layers and you know that this would have to be good. What do you think the ocean's doing? Southwest of Mexico this morning, the eclipse seared right through the Pacific Ocean. And it carved right through Mexico City, roughly, right? And it seared its way through the path of the Gulf of Mexico. And we do not have enough respect for our world to really like wonder what the fuck are they doing underwater right now? Well, like, what are the whales saying about the eclipse? How, do they know? Are they tapping into this same force I'm talking about? The if you were a ruler of an ancient state and you knew the eclipse was coming, this is the day. This is the day that you would show up at your enemy's door and you would dress in your eclipse costume that's like really freaking wild. I'm picturing it's a giant moon head and you wear nothing like you're completely naked, but your face is covered. So you not only do you have the full moon, like you walk backwards everywhere, but then you eclipse it and the anonymity of the mask embraces you. But if you think about the power of the psychic force that you could unleash by as your army walks, it turns dark, you would understand so much more about why this is a good thing. This is this the eclipse is never going to create a emotion that's not there. The eclipse is going to remind you that time is passing, that there is a knife that's cutting the past, and it's giving you this opportunity to step over the threshold. And right now, everyone's going to freak out. And they're going to freak out the same way they freaked out during COVID. COVID showed people the exact same truth that 9/11 showed them in a much larger degree. The fact that they were blank inserts, I don't think that you could have made a more powerful sign. I think the closest you could come to is dropping Building 7. This is just on a bigger scale. And if you can agree with this, I want you to start thinking about how off the chain Bluebeam is going to be. Because every time that one of these events happen, more people get involved with the next one. And it doesn't have to be good. The way to expose what a piece of shit New York City was is to sponsor a pillage and to prove to the world that, watch this. If you pass an eclipse through this place and you tell everyone about it, all the most evil, awful things that have been waiting to happen, that are always happening, you're going to be able to see for the first time. What is the eclipse doing? It's showing you things that you could see that you could not see before because it was too bright, right? So the shadows on the wall, for the very first time, you can start to recognize, hey, there's a wall and there's shadows on it, because it's not, the brightness isn't the intensity. And so in the middle of all the conspiracies, of all the other things that were happening during 9/11, the only mistake is to think that this could all be one thing, that the 4,000 bogeys on the radar screen during the drill, that the all of the different pictures of the E-team photos, all of the art stories, all of the demolition, all of the explanations from the firefighters are for the very first time. It's not that they're saying things that weren't there before. It's just that the dimming of the trauma gave you enough tonality to see something for the first time. And you watched Building 7 fall. You you watched blank inserts come out. And I hope that you saw both sides. I I hope that you saw that for every Fauci, there's a Kaufman. And I don't mean to make him the it's just true though. We don't get to say, well, these are the ones. Neither side has truth on its side. Both sides have belief on its side. Both sides are using that belief because it's the only thing that they can drink. It's the only nectar that keeps them alive. It's just like the eclipse. It's the immortality is what's the story that I can tell myself to make me not want to check out of this place? And a lot of people need there to be all magic, all plasma, all belief has to be completely under wraps. And historically, that's all we've seen, right? From demonology, from the earliest days of declaring words fornications, declaring cursing itself as being this. We know how potent that medicine is. Like, it, for fuck's sake, people, witch prickers, the pieces of metal shoved into people to determine whether or not they're sick, and were those turned into vaccines. The very first inoculations that we have was just a witch pricker where something metal is inserted inside of you, and it works. It I swear to you, it works. It would not have been this way. People would not have been believing this technology if it didn't have that power of working. And why does it work? Because we've talked about this. You're putting something inside your body. It's no different than eating something, but it's so much more torque. It's more of an eclipse. It's more of an obvious change, right? That you get to do the same thing you do with the eclipse. If you're terrified of vaccines, you're going to have autism. If you need this more than anything else, it's going to give you more immunity than you had before. And ultimately, if you're looking at the different levels, I would say to you that the blank insert is correct. I cannot think of a cleaner way of psyoping everybody than with a blank insert. It would be the only way that you could really start to tap into just how powerful placebo is. And that you'd put that out blankly and you would know that all you'd hear is Wuhan conspiracy. You'd probably have another war. You'd watch the CDC get 11,000 times stronger, but only in certain cities. You'd watch it be propelled and considered terroristic in rural areas. And that the eclipse sears its way through, and that both sides simply feel stronger than they did before. And I think this is progress. We're trying to say that it's evil to have an eclipse, but it's progress. It's amplifying the authenticity of how everyone feels. And we need both sides. People would die if they had to believe what I believe every day. They would die. Their heads would melt if they tried to carry some of the thoughts you have. I'm not the only one. And so we're not even right. We simply have a technology. And someone seems to understand this. Someone really clearly seems to understand this. People have asked about the Zionist agenda. But the Zionist agenda is our agenda. Zionism is the belief that if there's a promised land, then Zionist is the belief that we feel that we are at home. And so if we're going to prosecute Zionism, we're prosecuting people's need to have a crutch to feel at home. And so if there's the concept of a promised land is the concept that I would go to a place where no one would fuck with me anymore because I'm at the place that was promised to me. And this is the same illusion that anyone would have on the Serengeti, the same illusion anyone would have living in the bush. This idea that there's this place that I would go to, and that when I'm there, no one fucks with me anymore. And this is, who wouldn't want that? And as long as we want that, all of our surrendered power has to go somewhere. You know this. You know this. And so many people surrender that power and it goes somewhere. It goes into a pot, doesn't it? And that big pot, and it's up for grabs. And as long as people don't want that power, there's always going to be this Fauci. There's always going to be this. There's this guy Rob Bresney. I have a lot of respect for him. I can't believe how he's still here. Like I used to work in the weekly newspapers, and we carried his column, and I would always cut his column out and tape it in somewhere, and I would do little cartoons for his column because I wanted to. And I there's this writing website called Substack. I was setting up a page over there, and it suggested him to me. And today he was saying very thoughtful as usual, but it's the same kind of idea. He's like, if people are asking me if I should be afraid, and he said it's hard to not look at the world and not understand that it's fucked up. He didn't use the word fucked up. He much more eloquent. And that he's under that same same belief. It's it's so helpful if we all believe that we don't belong here and that we're killing the earth by being here and that everything's dying because of us and that we're poison. There's so there's so many you get to treat yourself like shit if you think that way. You get to neglect yourself. You get to sink into your addictions more. You get to check out on your kids. You get to phone it in at work. You get to mindlessly flip through social media instead of fixing your porch rails or putting lights on or you know cleaning your dishes. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is if you have this idea that everything's awful, that everything's broken, that we're poisoning everything. And so every eclipse is going to have this drama of oh shit, everything is awful. And it's also going to have the same kind of energy of all the enthusiasm that people have. I've been enthusiastic all day about the eclipse. I've been like time to saw off this this chunk of my old self. That's what I've been doing today. I've been sawing off old chunks of myself that I'm like, because why? Because the searing darkness of that magnifying glass coming through has given me finally enough oomph, enough fuel, right, to say, yeah, let's cut this off. Let's let's fix this. Let's do this. It's a catalyst. Same eclipse. So which side are you on, right? Like there's two sides of it. It's beautiful. Actually, what makes it so powerful is that it cuts through and it has these two sides, and all the prophecies that come with it are just an amplification of what was already there. And I like it when things are amplified because I don't lose calories wondering if what I sense is there is actually there. I lose so many calories doing that. I know you do too. Because you're just like, man, I swear I sense this. And then you ask someone, hey, does it seem this way? And then they lie to you. They're just like, no, of course it's not that way. And then you feel stupid because you didn't see it right. But you know, but you can't know because if you know, then you're wrong because and none of this you can even prove. You can't even prove it because even if you declare this is what I think's happening and no one's going to admit to it. None of us are going to it. Guys, it's all belief, man. It's just it's all belief. I get it. We just squeeze hard. You can think it's all real and everything's like decided, but it's not. It's just all it's beautiful. It's beautiful. All right, that's a lot. Ugh. Anybody got anything?
I was kind of wondering what I would feel like on this eclipse because I the 2017 one that crosses it like went through my town here, and I watched it and took a weird infrared picture of it that showed three different objects. And of course, since then I can't, somehow all those cameras, even though extra ones I bought on eBay were like broken, and I can't even use that software anymore unless I hook up my XP computer and then download it because it's not supported. But anyway, I was wondering what I would do, and then when I, leading up to it, there was these little things that were bugging me, like Native American elders, like go inside and sing songs about the earth. And then, you know, like you mentioned, James, you were saying, what, Vedic, no activity for 90 minutes or something like that, right? And, but I ultimately felt, there was a little bit of a spookiness, and I had a little bit of, of that typical like eclipse kind of premonition thing with the previous eclipse. But this one, I just kind of went with the cats were so relaxed and they just were enjoying the sunshine. And then I just, for some reason, on some write off juice, I got this huge, I've never had it before, this giant thing of like cold pressed just tangerine juice. And it's exactly the color of the eclipse. I was literally like drinking it. I was just laying in there. I was like, this feels good. This is like, some real good sunshine. And it was giving me like some nostalgic traveling through the country, going out west feelings, and it was just a really good feeling. So I ended up just informally feeling really good and just like wanting to do the opposite of like things that were just bugging me in the back. It's just the way I figured it is like in a James True way of the oracle of mythology that I can calibrate the tip of that to the egregore and just say that that energy is still legit wherever that is, and I can just point elsewhere and just have a different experience, and I did. So I just thought I'd share that, you know.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. It's, I've been, not even capable of reading social media the last couple of days. It's been a real challenge. I think just because I just have such a different flux versus what is mostly out there. It's certainly not. It's on all sides. In fact, I'll show you this picture, but I'm going to call on John first. Go ahead, John.
Oh, I was just saying I know about the earthquakes, so I didn't know if maybe that's from us, our angst,
Mhm.
maybe creating those earthquakes. So that was the one thing that kind of spooked me out, not gonna lie. It's like, oh no, what the hell's going on around here? We got all these earthquakes happening. So that kind of scared me a little bit. But then, after the eclipse went by, I was like, oh, of course, nothing happens. Everybody acted like all the eclipse was gonna happen and then all hell was gonna break loose. I mean, I've heard theories of the pit of hell opening up. I heard stories of the 3 days of darkness. I heard all these things, and I don't know. It just was like, oh my god, if
Mhm.
somebody believed all this, they would be the most scared person. It would just freak people out. I think just to think all
Yeah,
that stuff.
and it would feel good, but like it would it would make someone feel alive too. You know, like if for the next 3 days you're wandering around, you're just freaking out because you think the world's going to end. You are alive, man. You you are in the moment. And I realize that the cortisol is coming through, but if you think about that, that really is a good stretch of the aperture to contemplate your own death. I know we never turn around to thank the predator for that, but there's 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 been a few times where that's happened to me where I remember this bear encounter I had once, and it was just because the bear was separating the way that the bear showed up because it was between me and civilization. It really did a number on me, like because her babies were there, and I understood like what was on her mind, and like seeing me, and it was when I got back to the car, I was just high as fuck, man. I was so high, and I knew that, like, it was, as I was walking back home, because it was okay. I was not okay when it happened, because I just thought, she's gonna have to do what she's gonna have to do, and I don't even know if I'm gonna stop her. I mean, it's not that I could kill a bear, but it's like, what do I do? It's like, you got kids to feed, anyway, but I remember coming out of that just being high as a kite and just thanking the bear for that. Like, it was like that whole day was just, oh God, it was so great. So great. In fact, this image right here, Mohini in the Vedic tradition is, in this case, distributing the Amrita, this nectar of immortality, to the devas on the left, while the asuras look on to the right. And I want you to picture that Mohini is the eclipse here. It's not actually drawn that way, but I want you to picture that this is the eclipse, and on one side, everyone is being fed. And she's purposely looking at the side that's not being fed. Why is she purposely looking there? Because she needs them to know, I see you. She needs them to know, I see you, and I cannot feed you, because this is the food I'm giving you. The food I'm giving you is that I'm not feeding you. And we don't look at the world that way yet. And because we look at this as a slight, we don't understand that it was the wisest of the asuras on the right here that finally rose up and blocked out the sun. He swallowed the nectar and blocked out the sun. And again, we say that was wrong because his head was cut off. In fact, if you look over here, the head's cut off on the left side. Mohini, in this case, this is John the Baptist, by the way. I'm not saying this figure is John the Baptist, but this is the same story. And John the Baptist is April 15th, which is a whole other cool thing, because if you consider that if 8 days after Easter, 8 days after the original Passover is this magical day, and it happens to be on April 8th during an eclipse, during a new moon, and you've got John the Baptist, all these different figures that are losing their heads. Rahu, the body of this creature, is just one of them. You really have just the theme is such a catalyst. It's really kind of beautiful.
Just the eclipse itself, cutting, like if you think of the homunculus, like singularity of yourself, like sun gazing, it's like cut off, like your crown chakra is like your crown is like cut. So there's like another kind of symbolism, I think, there in that, just the actual, act of that happening. And even I was just thinking, like that picture you showed, I think it showed, like, I didn't really see it, but it seemed like had like 10 and 10 like figures, and then it's cut in the center. And I had this I am, and I had a penny that I'd found, and I stuck it in the center, and it kind of covered up part of the M and the I, and just made like, and I was thinking 10, and then 10 in reverse. It just reminded me of that, like a little eclipse. And I was like, oh, and it's like eclipsing the M, like in the I am. And I just was thinking,
nice.
Anyway. Yeah, that's a cool picture there. What is that from? Some kind
That's
of
Mohini. That's this figure Mohini, and the reason why I find Mohini so interesting in the reference to the eclipse is because this person is the person who loses his head, of course, is punished. I guess it's Shiva that punishes him, but never actually punishes Mohini. This is actually what made me realize, well, wait a minute, no one's being punished. If this was truly a punishment, then you would punish Mohini. Mohini's the one that should know better. She's the goddess going around passing out nectar like everyone gets it. Like, why would she offer nectar to Lucifer? if it's wrong, then why would you not punish Mohini? Which has made me start to realize, see, this is what happened with Cain and Abel. This is exactly what happened. We're going to take a quick break.